You are looking at a house built entirely out of a dead monster. 15,000 years ago, in a frozen wasteland with absolutely no trees to build with, a group of humans looked at a 6-ton woolly mammoth and decided, that is our new home. They used 200-pound skulls as bricks and giant tusks as a roof. Today, we are breaking down the most unthinkable, borderline insane tactics early humans used to cheat death every single day. Skulls stacked as a foundation, tusks arcing overhead like the ribs of the sky, hides pulled tight over the gaps to strangle the wind. No metal, no nails, no plans, just a group of humans who stared at the biggest corpse on the planet and decided it was now real estate. And here's the genius. A single mammoth handed them tons of meat, buckets of life-giving fat, hides for clothes, and once the flesh was gone, the skeleton became the house itself. Nothing wasted. Because out here, waste was just a slower word for death. But shelter was the easy part. The truly unthinkable stuff starts with food, and it plays out like the deadliest science experiment in human history. Here's a fact that breaks people's brains. In a frozen world, eating too much meat can kill you. It's called rabbit starvation, or protein poisoning. If you gorge on nothing but lean muscle with no fat, your body actually starts eating itself trying to process it all. You can stuff your stomach full and still slowly die. Ice Age humans figured this out with zero biology textbooks, and their solution was almost obsessive. They hunted for the fat. They chased the marrow. They cracked open bones with surgical precision to dig out the calorie-dense goo inside, essentially harvesting nature's energy bar hidden inside a leg. They understood human nutrition centuries before the word existed, paid for in bodies, one grim lesson at a time. But let's talk about the thing that really should keep you up at night, because for most of human history, we were not the top of the food chain. We were on the menu. Forget the caveman with a club fantasy. Picture the reality. The Ice Age steppe crawled with monsters. Cave lions, larger than the lions alive today, stalked the same plains you slept on. Cave hyenas, apex predators that dominated Ice Age Eurasia, hunted in packs and could crush bone with a bite. There were saber-toothed cats, bears the size of cars, wolves everywhere. And you're a slow, soft, clawless primate with no fur, weak eyes in the dark, and no natural weapons at all. To these things you weren't a rival. You were a snack that hadn't figured out it was being hunted yet. So now imagine night falling, the temperature crashes, and out beyond the edge of your camp, in the pitch black, you hear breathing, something heavy moving through the grass, eyes catching the last light. You cannot run, it's faster. You cannot fight it in the dark, you'll lose. You have exactly one thing standing between your family and being torn apart. Fire. We think of fire as a cozy heater. For ancient humans, it was a force field. A wall of light and heat that predators instinctively refused to cross. It didn't just cook food or warm hands, it was the reason the monsters stayed in the shadows instead of walking into camp and dragging someone off. And keeping that fire alive was so critical that people literally carried it with them, nursing glowing embers across miles of freezing wilderness in protective bundles, because letting it die out could mean the difference between waking up in the morning and not waking up at all. Someone in that group had the single most stressful job in prehistory, guardian of the ember. Lose it, and the darkness gets its opening. Fast forward to the plains of North America, where ancient hunters didn't just fight back against the environment, they bent it into a trap. At sites like Head-Smashed-In Buffalo Jump in what is now Canada, ancient hunters used fire, noise, and the landscape itself to stampede entire herds of bison off a cliff in a single choreographed event, dozens of animals harvested at once. This wasn't one hunter with a spear and a prayer. This was a synchronized operation requiring communication, trust, and timing so precise that being in the wrong spot could get you flattened by a wall of panicking, multi-ton animals. Humans didn't just survive the food chain, they learned to bend the whole environment into a trap. This brutal trial and error wasn't just happening in the frozen north. Across the globe, our ancestors faced a different kind of threat. Plants. You're standing in a field. Some of these leaves are dinner, some will stop your heart in 20 minutes. There are no labels, no warning symbols, no one to ask. So how did our ancestors ever build a menu? They ran a laboratory. A brutal, generational, human-fueled laboratory. Somebody had to be the first to eat the unknown root. Somebody isolated a single new berry, tested it, and either walked away with new data or didn't walk away at all. And here's the dark brilliance of it. Even a death was information. That person's final meal got carved into memory, into rules, into stories. This leaf near this season, this berry that looks just like the safe one, but isn't. It was trial and error where error meant a funeral. Take cassava, a food that feeds millions today, but which contains cyanide compounds and is genuinely toxic if you just bite into it. Ancient and traditional peoples cracked a multi-step code, soaking, fermenting, cooking in an exact sequence to disarm the poison and make it safe. Nobody handed them a chemistry degree. They reverse-engineered a lethal plant with nothing but patience, observation, and a stubborn refusal to die stupidly. Some of them even weaponized poison on purpose. And this applied chemistry goes back further than we ever imagined. Deep in South Africa, researchers found arrow tips coated in plant toxins, dating back an astonishing 60,000 years. Somebody watched a beetle larva or a plant kill an animal, memorized it, and figured out how to smear death onto a weapon without killing themselves in the process. That's not luck. That's applied chemistry, refined across generations of very careful, very deadly experiments. So how did any of this knowledge survive? No writing, no books, no way to save a single word. They built the save file into their own minds. Ancient oral tradition was a biological hard drive. Every dangerous plant, every flooding river, every deceptively calm-looking animal that could gut you, all of it got encoded into stories. Because a scary story about the cousin who ate the wrong mushroom is a piece of survival software your brain can't delete. Tribal myths were a searchable survival database, running on emotion instead of electricity, passed down flawlessly across dozens of generations. And it went further. They even used their bodies as records. Scientists tracked the DNA of clothing lice, a parasite that only evolved to live in fabric, and used it to estimate humans started wearing real clothing possibly as far back as 170,000 years ago. Around the same era, they were carving eyed sewing needles from bone to stitch tailored, layered, wind-sealed garments, the actual difference between surviving winter and becoming part of it. They hacked the planet, too. Where snow piled deep, they realized it trapped air and insulated like a blanket, and built into it. Elsewhere, they dug their homes partly underground, tapping the earth itself as a geothermal battery, naturally warmer in winter, cooler in summer, climate control thousands of years before electricity. And, the boldest hack of all, they cut into their own skulls. Trepanation, drilling a hole in a living human head with stone tools and no anesthesia, reached its peak in the Mesolithic and Neolithic eras, standing as the absolute pinnacle of ancient medical survival. And we know some patients survived because their skulls show healed, regrown bone around the opening. People lived for years after Stone Age brain surgery. So the next time your Wi-Fi drops and it feels like the apocalypse, remember this: your ancestors built houses out of dead giants, decoded poison with their own lives, held back monsters with a single flame, and performed surgery with a sharpened rock, all so that you could exist. We didn't survive because we were the strongest. We survived because we were the most stubborn, cooperative, and creative animal that ever lived. And honestly, we've had it easy ever since.